Good morning, everybody. I'm a couple of minutes late. I'm sure you haven't noticed. Those who don't know me, this is Cheryl Andrews. I'm the listening detective, and this is Feedback Friday. And today I'm talking about why is it so difficult to ask for help. I want to share with you a couple of things. People know that I generally work with entrepreneurs, managers, and parents. And I want to talk about each of those individual people, why they particularly, in my experience, and this is just my take on it, please, if you have an adverse reaction, you totally disagree with me, comment below, tell me what you think, because this isn't about me teaching you about the one single way or the one perception. It's about just sharing a perception. It's about sharing with you some patterns that I've noticed after 30 years of motivating, managing, and mentoring other people to help them understand why they say one thing and then do another. Things that I've noticed, these are just things that I've seen that have repeated. It's not the definitive, this is how it is, but it's just an experience. And what I'd love to hear from you is if it resonates and it makes sense to you, please comment below, because what that does is anybody else watching that perhaps isn't ready to comment, they go, oh, it's not just Cheryl, there's all these other people that do it, because that will help that person. But equally, if you have a different perception, I can ask you questions, I can learn from you, I can understand your perception, and that widens my own knowledge base and my own experience too. So there is not a right or wrong, there's just an awareness. So I want to talk about, first of all, why do entrepreneurs find it hard to ask for help? And this is just a generalization, but in my experience, having worked with them and also being one myself, is that generally people become an entrepreneur because they are decision makers, they like to take risks, or they have got sick of being told what to do in the corporate world, sick of not having the flexibility, not feeling free, not feeling valued, not feeling heard and understood in the corporate world. And so they've gone, bugger that, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to take control of my life, and I'm going to have and so it's their autonomy. And so what can happen is they believe they ought to and they should be able to do it on their own. And of course, what often is we've lost is that, yes, there was all that frustration when we're in a team and a corporate where our values didn't agree and we didn't feel valued, we didn't be heard. But what we lose when we become self-employed and we become an entrepreneur, and even if you build a team, if you're the owner of the business, it can be quite a lonely place, because you believe that you have to be positive, motivational, inspirational for other people. You know that when you hear sad news or when frustrations or things are not going wrong, it has an impact on you, so you assume that you can't share that with anybody else. So one of the reasons why entrepreneurs can find it so difficult to ask for help is because they believe it's up to them to find the solution, and they are the inspiration for everybody else, and therefore they have this high need to be independent. So the first thing I want to put on that one is that we are a pack mentality. So those of you who have learned about the triune brain from me before, this part, the green part of the brain, that's the bit of the brain where we are generally, as an animal at a basic instinct, we're part of a group, but there's parts of our own inner wisdom that we just cannot access on our own. So you can watch lots of videos like mine, you can do loads of reading, you can sit and journal and reflect, and you can do a lot of internal work, and you can quietly observe and scan the internet listening to loads of stuff. But until you actually hear your own wisdom, you won't really get the real answer that's going to work for you. And that requires another human being who is actually repeating your words back. Now, if you really don't want to ask for help, one of the things that you can do, especially if you're really good at helping the person with the problem that you currently have, is record yourself talking about the problem and then listen back to it as though it was somebody else. And think about, whereas you listen back to it, what you're hearing, what you're noticing, and what would you be telling that person to do? Because often when the problem is outside of us, our system doesn't get involved in the emotional impact that it's going to have on us, and it just becomes very logical and very practical, and we go, this is what you need to do, which obviously is much easier when you don't have to physically change anything and do anything, but at least it can give you your next best step. So that's one way to do it. The reason why it works really well with a clean language facilitator like myself is that our brain saves energy and doesn't bother listening to our own voice, particularly if we are complaining about the same thing over and over again. So when you get to work with a facilitator who repeats your words back to you, the good news is you are helping yourself. The facilitator is literally just giving you back what you've said. They don't add any opinions or suggestions. And so you are doing it all by yourself, for yourself, but because there's a different tone of voice, a different pitch, a different pace, and they are tracking patterns and asking questions, it will interrupt some of your patterns and help you to see and hear things that if you simply sat and talked to yourself, you wouldn't get access to. So that's one of the reasons why entrepreneurs find it difficult. Managers, why do managers find it difficult to ask for help? Well, the first thing is often time. People, more and more I work in the corporate world. I mean, people have coaching sessions with me and they're booked 9 till 10, and then at like 1 minute to 10 they're going, I've got to go, I've got to get on the next call. So they've just done a whole load of personal work, they've been doing some self-exploration, and they go straight from that one to the next one, and they have no time to process or put in their diary what they're going to do next, or plan it or do anything. They're straight into the next meeting. So the number one reason why I believe managers don't ask for help is because they don't have time. They don't even have time to even recognize they need it until their body is crying out for help. So they get, coughs, colds, stress, illnesses and ailments that we know are related to stress. So if you've got lots of headaches or upset stomachs or a cough or a cold, most of those things are a symptom of stress. Even if you don't like to think that you experience stress, it's a fact. We all get it, and how we process it, how we work stress through our system will be individual to each of us. But most of the time, when I see managers, the number one reason is they don't have time to process what they've heard and then make a conscious decision what they're going to do with it. And if they have experienced any stress by what they've heard, they have to park it, put it in a box, move on to the next one. Then something else might bring up some stress. They park that and put it in a box, and before they finish, by the time they finish the day, they're weighed down with all these little boxes of stress, rather than have the time to just go, God, yeah, that's a bit annoying, or that's a bit frustrating, or whatever. It doesn't have to be major stress trauma. It's a build up of lots of little niggles, and they don't have time to process that and to actually do something with that information. So number one reason for managers not doing asking for help is time. The second reason is because they are now being asked under mental health wellbeing is that they need to be more aware of their staff. They need to listen more. And I remember a few years ago I worked with a manager in a leading high street retail company, and she said, I'm being asked to listen to all my staff. I'm being asked, if they cancel their shift or they want to change it, I'm not allowed to ask them if they can help move it around. She says, I've got to take responsibility for it because we're not allowed to put pressure on them from a mental health issue point of view. But what that was doing was that she was actually taking all the responsibility and feeling all of the pressure from all of the changes, and she was finding herself having conversations about, with her staff about the fact that their mother was dying, or their dad had died, or their child was, being bullied at school, and there was all this stuff, and just listening to that can be tough. But if you have also recently lost a loved one, or you've got challenges with your children and you haven't got the answers, listening to this stuff can expand it. And often people have gone to work to get a break from that stress, the stuff that's going at home, grief and loss and sadness. They take their toll on our system, and distraction is a great way of not, to manage those to some extent. And so people are going to work for a break, and then they're being asked to listen to things that are much more challenging, but more to the point, maybe triggering and igniting and connecting them back with the stuff they were having a break from thinking about, or having a break from having to deal with. And so I really do think we've got to ask ourselves really carefully as, a society, are we resourcing those people? Now, when I worked with this manager, what she did is she actually went and offloaded to her district manager. She said, actually, they're expecting me to listen to everybody else offloading, then it's only fair that I can offload to them. So she was able to vent, she was able to express her concerns. She was also, through the process of she was working with me, so she then became aware that she did have some grief around her father, and she was able to work with me to actually process that grief and to turn that story around to one that was serving her and allowing her to experience joy and bliss and pleasure now, and to live life despite how much she really missed him. So one of the reasons I think that managers don't do it is because time. Secondly, they're being asked, they're being told that's their job description and they have to do it, but they're not being supported and resourced. And some of them are fearful to ask for that support because of repercussions. Will it look like they can't cope? Will it look like they're not a good enough manager? And so the fear of losing their job, their livelihood, being able to provide for their family, it puts huge amounts of pressure, particularly if they're the main wage earner and they pride themselves on providing security for their family. That can be a massive pressure on them. So the third reason for parents, the reasons why we don't ask for help, is, in my experience and my own personal experience, it's because of fear of loss and shame. So for me, I know when I was really struggling with my daughter, there were times when she was really, really stressed. She was angry and she was kicking things and things were getting smashed, and I would listen and I'd listen. I was trained, I'd listen, I'd go for hours and I'd listen and it didn't matter what I said or what I do. And when she was hysterical, there was a time when I slapped her. I think I'd seen it on a movie, when someone's hysterical, I thought I just wanted to get her out of it. She was just in a state. Now, I don't condone my behaviour. I don't think it was the right thing to do. But it was what I'd seen on TV and I was at my wit's end and I didn't have a solution. But what stopped me from asking for help was the only two options I thought I had was go to the doctor and be put on antidepressants because I wasn't coping, or go to social services and they might take my child away from me. So the fear of loss can mean that, when we start making up what we think is going to happen as a result of reaching out and asking for help, or we worry about what other people think of us, in the case of a manager, you could lose your job. In the case of a parent, you could lose your child. So actually, the loss is pretty intense. It's pretty and in the case of entrepreneurs, you might lose your business, which then means you lose your security, which means you could lose your family. There's massive losses associated with these decisions, and people I don't think people fully appreciate the pressure that people are under when it comes to asking for help. And I think the other thing to remember as well, that parents think they should know how to do this thing. They think that, particularly if they've had parents who always looked strong, always looked like they were capable, then they perhaps don't know what was going on inside for their parents. Maybe they don't know what support network their parents had. Maybe those parents had more friends and family they could talk to. Whatever else was going on for those, maybe their strength. Equally, if you didn't have a particularly great role model for your childhood, you know what you don't want, but maybe you've never sat down and thought about, if you were parenting your best, that would be like what. And what everybody assumes is that it's a one-person job. And I really love the expression that, it takes a village to raise a child. I truly believe that, and one of the things I was very grateful for my own daughter, having aunties, having girlfriends, other people, even my ex-husband having many girlfriends, it meant my daughter had access to lots of different kinds of women. So she had lots of different role models, and she was not narrowed down to just me, which was probably a really good idea, because she was finding her identity. She was coming out as gay, and obviously I don't identify as a lesbian, and so she couldn't relate to me. She couldn't ask me for questions and answers, and I couldn't answer those questions. I didn't know the information. So exposing people to more kinds of people means that they start to have, this bit's got a little bit of me, and this person's got a little bit of me, and this person's got a little bit of me. And then you're not just comparing and contrasting with one parent, thinking you have to be like them or you're not like them. And your confidence can build when you're exposed to lots of variations of people. But as parents, we just think we need to be able to do it on our own. And often we've either got a role model of perfection parenting, but we don't know the invisible stuff that was happening behind the scenes. We're too young to be aware of it. Or we've had really parenting, we only remember the stuff that didn't work, and we're desperately trying not to do that, but forgetting that sometimes that's part of parenting. We're not always going to get it right. We are going to get cross. We are going to get upset. And we may feel shame for the way that we've behaved. And having someone that you can confidentially talk to can make all the difference. So given all that, that's reasons why I've seen the people that I work with, managers, entrepreneurs and parents, who find it hard to ask for help. The other physical fact why we find it hard to ask for help, the triune brain, basically the red part of the brain, that's the reptilian brain. When we're stressed, the brain takes away the oxygen in the blood from the neocortex part of the brain, which is the part of the brain where we can problem solve, we can spot patterns, we can make sense, we can be creative, those sort of things. When we're stressed, it physically takes blood away from the neocortex part of the brain, and it sends the blood and the oxygen out to our hands and feet so that we can fight, flight or freeze. And what happens is it actually narrows our perceptions of time. So we're just literally dealing with the drama or the stress right now. Your system is, all it's trying to do is get you into survival state, get you through this moment in time. And so one of the reasons we can't ask for help is because we cannot in that moment reflect and remember what works for us, what we like, what we don't like, what we need, what we don't need. We can't project forward and anticipate what we might need. And so even when someone says to you, what would you like to happen? Quite often at the very first time I speak to a client, they're like, I don't know. I just know it's not what I've got. But the more I sit with them and quietly and calmly ask them questions, the more their system settles. The more their survival state goes, oh, okay, they're not on their own, they're not isolated, they've got somebody that's got their back now, they're safe, they're going to be okay. And the more that their system settles, then they can start thinking about what they'd like to have happen. And so if you take one thing from this video, in order to ask for help, or even for somebody to take your help from them, if you're offering help, they have to first of all be in a state of calmness. They have to know they're safe in order to hear anything. Secondly, your help may not be the help they actually need. The help that you're offering is what you need to give so that you feel better, because you don't like seeing them stressed. And so also knowing that you have to manage your own state and be okay with the emotions you're feeling or any anxiety you're feeling, because you want them to feel better, because they may be going through an experience where right now they need to feel whatever they're feeling. That the best help you can give them is to listen to the fact that they're sad, or they're angry, or they're frustrated, or they're grieving, or whatever else. If they allow them to experience their experience and to express or expel their emotion. And emotions are energy emotions, so they're the energy that's in their system. Sometimes all help they need is someone to hear and witness and honor who they are in this moment, and for it to be okay for them to be experiencing it as it is. And if you do nothing else, then that often changes the state, that is all the help that they needed. Once you've been able to settle your state, you can ask for help. Now, what I've discovered over the years is I would ask clients what they'd like to have happen, and they would say what they wanted. And for some people, that immediately meant the state is settled, they got clarity of what they wanted, the confidence would renew because they knew what they were going to do, they could now take action. They would take action, they'd get some kind of feedback that said, yep, that worked, that's great, and that was it, sorted, job done. And 80% of the time, just having some space and time to calm your system down and reassure you that you're not being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, even if you are under threat of losing your job or your home or whatever happens. I know they're horrendous, or losing loved ones, they're horrendous experiences. But during those things, we are a society that has benefits, we have communities. If and when you can ask for help, you will never be left. There will be support there if you're able to reach out and find the right people at the right time. So once you can settle your state and you can work out what you want, in nearly always that's enough. But what I discovered over the years, and this is what book number 2 is about, the difference between people who did what they said they're going to do and the people who didn't, is that the people who didn't know themselves very well. They didn't know what they needed in a crisis. They didn't know what they needed when they were stressed. They didn't know what they needed to feel successful or to feel valued or to feel important. They didn't know what they needed to work at their best, learn at their best, live at their best. And so when asked what they'd like to have happen, they were often asking for what they thought other people think they should do. They were often asking or saying what they thought the questioner needed to hear, but it wasn't what they really, really wanted. And so if what they really wanted didn't feel appropriate to say it out loud, it's not acceptable. I often talk with people going through grief, and maybe they're losing a loved one, and actually that they want the loved one to be out of pain, but they feel guilty for almost wishing them to be gone because they don't want to lose them. They don't want them to be gone, but they don't like the limbo place that they're in. And so they get stuck and they feel it's not okay to express those thoughts. And so when asked for what they'd like to have happen, they don't give the real answer. They give a edited or tailored one that they think is acceptable. Or they just don't answer the questions. They don't have the conversations because they don't want to have to deal with what other people have got to say. A great example with someone I was chatting to this week, they said, I withdrew from a group. I didn't tell them why, because if I said to them, look, I'm just not in a good place, I need to retreat to resource myself, I would have got loads of messages coming through going, are you okay? Are you all right? And I really didn't need that. So one of the reasons why we don't ask for help is because we don't actually know what kind of help we need in different situations. And we haven't got enough support network around us who will trust us that when we say, I am withdrawing to retreat and I'm going to be okay, they don't believe us. They have to check. They need to reassure themselves. They need to know because of all the mental health stuff. One of the signals people say is, if people retreat and they withdraw, you need to check they're okay. But actually, particularly for someone like me, who's sort of in the public domain, spends a lot of time with people, the best way that I can resource and support myself is to take myself away from people and have time alone. And so I've had to learn to reassure my family, and when being on my own is the right kind of thing, I'm all right, versus I'm going down a slippery path of depression. And so the challenge we've got in life is that people don't understand what they need in terms of help, and they don't have people around them that will believe them when they say, I absolutely know this works for me. And mostly it'll come down to how long. So if you need to talk to vent and you're talking about what's not working and you just need to have a good old bitching session, I would say to you, it's about how long. Are you going to be bitching about this for 4 years, 5 years, or is it going to be a 5-minute power bitch? The person who wants to support you, and for you, it's a really good idea that you know how long does it work for. Equally, if you retreat and take time out, let people know how long for, because they need to know what the warning signs are, that now that the retreating has gone from being restorative and helpful to perhaps being at risk of being alone and isolated and now finding it hard to come back. And the talking can be really great for venting, but sometimes the talk about what's not working and going on about that, it becomes a distraction. The talking means that your attention is over there, you're telling other people, you're seeing their reactions, and that means you don't have to deal with how you feel. So they can both behaviors can work and not work. And you are the only person that can work out what works for you, how long, how often, and what you need. And so when you get to know, like, and trust what works for you, you're going to have much more ability to give confidence to the people who care about you, and to be able to build a network of people that can behave in a way that will be resourceful and supportive of you to get yourself through change. Life is tough at times, but it's also gorgeous and beautiful. And without that support, we can't go through some of the most difficult changes in life. And being able to either say, just I need to be quiet, or I need to talk, and this is how long for, here's the warning signs of when it gets too much. This is when I know I'm tipping into, I'm dealing with it and I'm expressing it, versus actually I'm ignoring it and I'm now don't know what to do with it. I need some help. So I'm hoping today's video has been of use to you. Please, I'm running a campaign through July. My power hours are normally they're £97. If you book a power hour with me, at the end of that session, you'll have clarity of what you want, confidence in your next best step, but also you would have experienced a way of being supported through change, a way of helping yourself helping you to help yourself, a way of getting to know, like, and trust yourself. If at the end of that hour you don't feel it's been of any help to you whatsoever, you do not have any clarity or confidence in your next best step, then I would give you a complete full refund. However, in July, and I'm very confident you will get some kind of information and resource to help you, I'm also donating £50 of every power hour that I book in July to the charity to support a friend whose cousin took their life this time last year, and they're wanting to raise £10,000 for CALMS. So if we book those power hours this month, you will get help for yourself or the people that you care about, but you'd also be helping somebody else, because we're going to pay forward £50 of those sessions to the charity. So without any further ado, have an amazing Friday. It's the 2nd of July. We're now over halfway this year. Take some time out today and think about what is working, what's not going so well, and what could work better. And you know where I am if you need that support. Have a fantastic weekend. Speak to you soon.